Thank you. I need to start by explaining that I really did get the memo from the TEDx organizers. And presenters are not supposed to wear ties. These are supposed to be informal and engaging talks, and ties make it too formal and stuffy. But I have to confess, I am a lifelong fan of the Chicago Cubs. And it's October 29th of 2016, and for the first time in my life, the Cubs are playing in the World Series, and I am thrilled. And my day job is I'm a Presbyterian minister, and I'll just say that being a Cub fan is really the best possible preparation for being a Christian minister. But my topic today is laughter is carbonated holiness, which is a phrase that writer Annie Lamott said, and I think it's really a good way for us to think about laughter, because laughter has power. That's one of the things I want you to leave this talk with today, is recognizing laughter has power. The other thing is that worship and laughter are this close together. And with that, I present the picture. You probably have seen a reproduction of this picture without my 21st century edition. Three things you need to notice about that picture. Oh, and I know which one you want me to start with first, but no. First thing you need to know is that this is Adam. Adam is the first human being. His name comes from the Hebrew word Adamah, which means soil or earth. The first human being God made left-handed. Okay? Who's left-handed here? Huh? About 10% of you. Yeah, this is all for us. The second thing you need to notice is Adam has a belly button. Now, I'll let that sink in a little bit. There are two people on earth who probably should not have belly buttons. That would be Adam and Eve, because they were not connected to their mothers. Now, I made this point to a gathering last month, and someone said, well, maybe God thought Adam was like the Pillsbury Doughboy and just gave him one of those little things. I don't think so. I think the artist got it wrong. The third thing I want you to notice, Adam is circumcised. Now, think about this. He is the only person on earth, right? So it's a selfie, okay? And I did the research. Metalwork wasn't invented until the 4th chapter of Genesis, which means either it was a sharp rock, or there was one of these creatures that God made before humanity that did the deed. Most audiences are a little edgy, a little uncomfortable about that, but let me tell you, when I made this point to the National Gathering of Presbyterian Women last summer, they loved it. They loved the idea of man inflicting pain on himself. Okay, and I'm going to make that go away, I hope, or someone will make that go away. Yeah, because that's kind of distracting. My topic is laughter is carbonated holiness, and I really think it's important to understand what laughter is, how it works, and even how humor works. When I was in seminary, I decided I would write a paper, a year-long project on humor in the Bible. And I like humor, I understand how it works, and I figured I would find these long-forgotten passages that go like this. And then the Israelites said unto Moses, tell us again the one about the concubine, the Pharaoh, and the 40 serpents. Then they smote some Philistines. I figured the Bible's full of this, because who's really read all the Bible, right? I didn't find any jokes like that. And what I found was that humor is a very difficult thing to define. It's a very difficult thing to study, because everybody has their own sense of humor. And what I find funny, other people don't find funny. And then to think about what it could mean that the people who first told and wrote these stories originally, what they would have understood as humorous in different cultures, and what they would have laughed at in societies that we really can't reconstruct, it was simply beyond what I could do. So rather than studying humor in the Bible, I studied laughter. And I found some interesting things about laughter. First, laughter is involuntary communication. Now think about that. Usually when we communicate, it's because we're talking, we're writing, we're in control of that. But laughter, when it's genuine, when it comes spontaneously, it's involuntary. Laughter is also a very social thing. This group of people, about I think 100 of you bought tickets for TEDxOshkosh, you're much more likely to laugh in a presentation like this in a group of 100 than if you were alone. Because laughter it's about communication. And I'm sure, I can't prove this, I think I might have read it somewhere, but you can tell when laughter is genuine and when it's not. Even if you've never heard this person laugh before, you know when they're laughing sincerely or when they're faking it. Laughter is communication, and it's involuntary communication. And babies laugh long before they can speak. Babies are able to laugh and communicate to whoever's tickling them or doing whatever's making them laugh. I'm liking this. Laughter is involuntary communication, and it also has power. It also has power, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that power. I found three in the Bible when I was studying laughter. I found there were really three occasions that laughter is recorded in the Bible. And by far, the most numerous, the largest group is laughter that comes at someone's expense. Laughter that ridicules, diminishes, belittles, humiliates. Some examples, the second chapter, the second psalm, God sits enthroned in the heavens and laughs at the plans of mortals. In the 31st chapter of the book of Proverbs, where the ideal wife is described, it says, this worthy, competent woman can laugh at the problems of the day because she's better than them. These problems don't threaten her, and she can laugh them off. My favorite one, this kind of laughter, comes from the book of Job, where it says, the ostrich laughs at the horse and its rider. And I love the picture of this. I presume that's because the ostrich can outrun someone on horseback. But I imagine an ostrich running away, right, and looking over its shoulder. At this point, I always realize, I don't know, do ostriches have shoulders? I don't know. But whatever it is, it looks over and says, can't catch me, I'm faster than you are. The mocking ostrich, I love that. That's in the Bible. There's another passage, another person who talks about how painful it is to be laughed at, and that's the prophet Jeremiah. When things were going really well in Judah and Israel, he foretold doom and destruction. And sure enough, Babylon came down and destroyed the country. When things were really bad, after the destruction and the people were carried up into exile, he started preaching words of hope and encouragement and said, God's going to come and restore us. He was always out of time with the people. And he also complained a lot about how awful it was to be God's prophet. He said, people mock me, they make mouths at me, I am a laughingstock, because he has responded to God's call. So, and laughter, that kind of laughter is by far the most numerous, most common in the Bible. Last night we were talking about how Jesus never laughed, and then I had to back up and say, wait a minute. The Bible never records Jesus as having laughed, but Jesus was laughed at. There's this story in the first three Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, about how Jesus gets word that this 12-year-old girl is very sick. And he goes to her house, and when he gets there, he finds that the doorway is crowded with people mourning and wailing because the girl has died. And he says, don't weep and mourn. The girl's not dead, she's only sleeping. And the very next words in the New Revised Standard Version are, and they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. They laughed at Jesus because he was wrong. Well, Jesus got the last laugh. He walked in and said, little girl, get up. And she did. Great, that's a happy story. But that's the first kind of laughter. And the power that laughter has is to really diminish and harm other people. The second kind of laughter is laughter as an emotional release. This is often contrasted with tears in the Bible. Those of you who are between the ages of 40 and 70, when I say to everything, turn, 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 there is a season. Okay, now stop. And a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to laugh and a time to weep. Laughter and tears are often contrasted because both of them are ways that we express something, emotion, feeling, passion, spirit. Somehow, laughter is how we get that out. Some of you, probably all of you, have laughed till you've cried. I personally, and some other people I know, have cried until they've laughed. And that kind of laughter feels good when you're done with it. You have to take a deep breath, and you just feel better because you've gotten this stuff that's been in you, you've been able to get it out. Now, last month in my church office, I walked in, there were 4 people standing there, and they were laughing uproariously about something. I didn't know what it was. Someone had told a joke. I didn't hear the joke. I didn't hear the punchline, but I was in this room with 4 other people, and I started laughing. Laughter was contagious. This kind of laughter is contagious. And it's the laughter of children at play. You ask a 4-year-old, what's so funny? It'll say, it's just fun. Fun and funny are the same things to preschoolers because they're always finding things to laugh at. Children laugh between 5 and 30 times more often than adults every day. So this laughter that's contrasted with tears, and Jesus says this in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "Blessed are you who mourn and weep, for you will laugh, and woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep." So there's that contrast in the second kind of laughter, and that's the second most frequent kind of laughter in the Bible. Now, I've given a similar presentation in many groups, in civic organizations and gatherings at churches, and I have said that I'm convinced that there is only one place in the Bible where laughter is recorded as a response to a humorous incongruity. Now, I need to confess, I went to the University of Chicago, so that's how I had to talk about the phenomenon of laughter. Laughter as a response to a humorous incongruity. Everywhere else on earth you say laughter at something that's funny. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about now. And I'm convinced that the only place this happens is the stories around the book, around the birth of Isaac. The story goes that God first came to Abram, before he was Abraham, and said, "You're going to have an heir." And Abram said, "I'm really old. I don't see how that's going to happen." And God said, "Step outside of the tent. Count the stars in the sky. That's how many descendants you're going to have." 2 chapters later, God appeared to Abram again, and Abram recognized God, and it says he worshiped, which means he fell on his face. He prostrated him. I also have to be careful with that word. He prostrated himself before God. And God said, "Abe, you're going to have a son," and changed his name to Abraham. And when God said to Abraham, "You're going to have a son," this time he fell on his face in laughter. He lost muscle control at the idea. It was so preposterous that this old man could have a son with his wife, Sarah. And the New Revised Standard says this very delicately. It had ceased to be for Sarah after the manner of women. So they were both really old, and yet God came to them and said, "You're going to have a child." Now, in the 18th chapter of Genesis, 3 men appear to Abraham. And somehow, it's not really clear who they are, but the Lord is kind of among them. And the Lord, and Abraham is a great host. He snaps into action, and he has Sarah whip up some pot roast for the visitors, washes their feet, and gives them this wonderful feast. And after they're done eating, one of them says, "I will return in due season, and Sarah will have a son." And it says, and Sarah laughed. And then the Lord said, "Why did Sarah laugh?" And Sarah said, "No, I didn't laugh." And the Lord said, "Oh, yes, you did." Now, okay, this is Genesis 18. Now, I know Bible knowledge isn't what it should be in the United States in the 21st century, but most of you remember what was happening in Genesis 1 when God was saying, "Let there be light. Let us create humankind in our own image." God would say these things and stuff would happen. 17 chapters later, God is having this argument with this 90-year-old woman. "You're going to have a son," or Sarah's going to have a son. "How can this be? You laughed." "No, I didn't." "Yes, I did." And when I write my own version of Scripture, the book of Tom, I'm going to have Sarah saying, "Nuh-uh." And I think "nuh-uh" really kind of captures the incredulity that Sarah had. But God came through. God came through. 21st chapter of Genesis. Sarah has a son, and she is filled with joy, and she says, Everyone who hears this will laugh and rejoice with me, for I have had a son in my old age." She's thrilled. She names him Yitzhak, that's Hebrew, for Isaac, which means laughter. She says, "God has given me laughter in my old age." It's a happy story of redemption and deliverance. Oh, and do I point out that Abraham and Sarah and Isaac are the founders, are the patriarchs of Judaism and Christianity. Okay, so Judaism and Christianity start with this divine joke of laughter. We start with this gift of joy that this old woman and this old man could have a baby. I'm not going to stop there. I could, and sometimes when I give this sermon as a guest preacher, I'll say, I could stop here, and I just watch the people kind of look up. He's almost done. And then I say, but I'm going to go on a little more. Okay. And then, okay. So, but the conclusion is, when Isaac is 2.5 or 3, when he's weaned, Abraham throws a huge feast, and at the feast, Sarah sees her Isaac, her toddler, laughter, being played with by Ishmael. Ishmael is Isaac's half-brother, the child that Abraham had with Hagar, Sarah's maid, and he's about 12 or 13, and she sees she sees Ishmael Isaacing with Isaac, and that is really, really painful for her. And she has Ishmael and his mother Hagar expelled from the household, and they go out into the wilderness. I said before, worship and laughter are this close together, and they are when Abram falls on his face in worship, and then when he falls on his face in laughter. They're very close together. But also laughter has power. Laughter has power to ridicule, diminish, humiliate, but it can also bring people together when we're laughing together, when we're getting all these great feelings out in being together. It can also be a way that we express, I hate to say this, we express our appreciation for humorous incongruity, which means sometimes we laugh when it's funny. Thank you.